Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Davies.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people in whose country we're meeting, and elders past and present, and also to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be here. And giving that acknowledgement, like Auntie Janet said this morning, I always try and think, okay, what's that mean in this context? And think for all of you, some very obvious things probably pop to mind. For me, recognising the importance of trying to get a really deep understanding of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's experience of schooling in this country and our history means that we should be better able to appreciate what we need to do to properly engage the parents of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids and not make assumptions about our sets of values as non-Indigenous people when we go to try to engage them in schooling, because those histories and experiences lead to very different sets of understandings about what a relationship with school is and how effective they can be as parents. And so it prompts me to think there's a lot of culturally specific approaches that we need to bring into this conversation, as well as remembering the general aspirations and the general propositions we have about how we can improve things. So I will try to keep that lens in my head as I work with you guys further in this journey together. I think it was good to have a short presentation from the Minister Garrett this morning. It was unfortunate he wasn't able to be here, because I know he has been thinking about the challenge that we have to increase parental engagement a lot. And similarly now, Senator Collins has only been in this role for a short period of time, but I know she's already deep in her thinking about it as well. And I'm very confident we've got two leaders there that will continue to press a case with their colleagues in our systems and with their education, school education partners in the Ministerial Council to do better on this. I'm also really grateful to the Bureau and APC and AXO for pulling this together. I think it's a really good fora, and I'm hoping that we'll all be gaining a lot out of it. Yes, okay, so I'm just going to do a quick presentation, because just for 15 or 20 minutes, and hopefully see if there's any contributions as a result of my brief talk. I'm just going to talk very shortly about the strengthening the partnerships, a couple of the initiatives that have been around to give voice to parents, and then a little bit on where I see the opportunities for us at the moment in working together to advance the objectives that we do share. And I think it's worth remembering this morning, Kaz was talking about, the framework was produced, how many years ago now? 5?
2005 it was developed,
Yeah.
2006 finalised, 2008
8 signed off. So that the framework was signed off in 2008, and I think, there is a bit of a shared, frustration's probably not the right word, a bit of shared concern about the rate of progress since then, because there was a head of steam up. And I, in more than 30 years experience at all levels of government and in the community sector and as an educator, my observation is reforms, as you know, they have spits and spurts, and they can gather a momentum and make significant improvements at points of time when planets align and opportunities suddenly created, and then they can pause for a bit, and then you can suddenly feel as if you're outside of the main conversation. And I just think it reinforces the centrality of the importance of APC and AXO and initiatives like the Bureau to keep the momentum behind the reform agenda. And in this case, we had a really substantial and critical recognition of the importance of parent engagement in schooling when the Melbourne Declaration was brought down, and it was at the time of the framework being agreed, and there was a really big head of steam. And then we moved into a new wave of reforms where arguably the focus has been on literacy, numeracy, school improvement, and if you like, the learning focus in our school education systems. And I do share a view that the scale of the aspiration articulated in the Melbourne Declaration is one that that has yet to be fully achieved, fully committed. Not committed to is the wrong word. The commitments are there, and I do believe they are real. But the scale of reforms going on has meant that not all things are being progressed at the same rate as others. I think that's probably the way I see it, and I do believe that it is good for organisations like APC and ACSO to be reminding us in the bureaucracy and to our ministers and to the other stakeholders, and there are more of them now than there were 5 years ago in the school reform agenda, that a central commitment of the Melbourne Declaration is about better parent engagement and making it a core value in our schooling systems. And there are great examples all around the country, and we're hearing a lot of those today. And so it's good to remember both the progress that is being made as well as reminding ourselves about the key aspiration and key goal that we seek to make real. The Family School Partnerships Bureau, Communities Partnership Bureau, I think that's a recent example of trying to strengthen that relationship between parent organisations and government agencies. And I think it has given us a boost to the parent engagement efforts that are going on. And there are examples of some good work that's been contributed to, led by the Bureau. But it's also just added, I think, a bit more, from my perspective inside the bureaucracy, it's added a bit more of an impetus to us in terms of how we engage with the parent bodies. It's an asset, but it's also a reminder to us about the need for us to have that regular conversation and regular engagement, and that also has been reaffirmed as well through the regular fora that we have with the representatives of the state and territory organisations inside APC and ACSO, and with the presidents and committees, and those fora again have really helped us try to articulate more clearly where it is that we in the bureaucracy need to be trying to focus our attention to get some improvements, and I'll go into a bit more detail about that in a moment. And of course, you are aware that the APC and ACSO do get funding from this department to assist with running their businesses, small though they are and under-resourced, absolutely. There is at least some assistance provided there. And I've heard loud and clear today about one of the key messages being around resourcing and how we need to improve on the way that support for parent bodies as well as individual parents and families needs to be addressed. The biennial forums, just briefly, we've been holding them since 2002. I've been involved in the last couple of years since I've joined this part of the department, which is the Engagement and Wellbeing Group. So that's our within the schools cluster, and we are the key point of contact with APC and ACSO and working with the Bureau. And that's basically because our brief in engagement and wellbeing is pretty much as it sounds, which is about trying to make sure that there is a focus on what are the elements of good practice in schooling that lead to good engagement with kids in their learning and good engagement with parents. And it's an attempt to try and keep a focus on one of the essential elements of the Melbourne Declaration, which is about students' well-being across the domains of well-being, from spiritual to health to a whole range. There's 7 elements of in the Melbourne Declaration that relate to well-being. So our job is to try and be a bit of an advocate within the department for those elements of education which are about students' whole self and their complete growth as individuals and as citizens, and trying to work with our colleagues who focus more on learning aspects or different reform agendas or particular initiatives that governments bring in, is to try and keep the debate and the dialogue going around the whole of student and the good practice that leads to well-engaged young people becoming confident and able to have independent lives with a focus on their complete well-being. So the forums that we've had over the last couple of years, the most recent one was only in April, and characterise it as, for me, was a significant and clear call from parent bodies to say we want to move from being consulted, communicated with, to being a partner. That the reform agendas over the last several years have been significant, they've been rapid, and there is a massive agenda being moved through our schooling systems across the country now. That should lead to some really fantastic improvements over time with a national curriculum, with teacher standards, and with a whole variety of school improvement foci. But loud and clear, we've heard that parents have not been adequately engaged in the policy agendas around those, and have not been adequately engaged as partners, but rather as more stakeholders. So yeah, moving from stakeholders to partner was the key message that we received. And they also reaffirmed several of the messages that we've heard this morning around the importance of exploring models for improving our resourcing and our support for parents in their own confidence and their capacity to be the best first teacher that they can be, and also resources to go to the challenge of how you can have teachers feel confident and capable to be able to work in partnership with parents. And as someone said this morning, it easily rolls off your tongue, but the challenges to create confident and capable parents and confident and capable teachers working in partnership together for the kids' benefit is a big challenge. Also, one of the messages out of the most recent forum was around the need to particularly address middle years wellbeing issues. We recognise that when you look at some of the key data sets that are available to us in both in learning from NAPLAN and other data indicators, but also many of the health and wellbeing indicators that we have available out of the ABS or the Institute of Health and Welfare, that the middle years are a real risk point for many of our children, and both boys and girls. And we are extremely concerned around the picture of the lack of engagement starts to drop off significantly in years 8 and 9. And in fact, by year 9, the disengaged were already well disengaged. And of course, I know you're probably all thinking, yeah, and it starts before they even get to school, but we do know that there are major influences that young teenagers are open to and have to deal with. And there was a strong feeling that as educators, as school system managers, we weren't really grappling with the complexities that our children entering into the junior years of high school are facing, and so consequently things like, for the last 3 years, the body image concerns expressed by young people have been in the top 3 factors raised by kids as their major concern in the national surveys that have been conducted. And similarly, mental health issues and coping with stress in school are consistently those top factors in the 11 to 14 age group in the survey data. So we agreed, yeah, that there is a need there that perhaps we aren't focusing on. And for parents, you know, I don't have the data on this, but I imagine shifting from parent of a primary school child to shifting into a parent of a teenager brings with it many anxieties and new sets of skills that are required, new sets of ways of dealing with the school that perhaps are quite different to those they used in the earlier years. There was also a strong advocacy around better use of the materials and the projects and the initiatives which are going on. You've heard lots of examples already this morning. There's more to come. There's lots of good practice, good work going on. But a major focus and challenge for us around, it goes back to the systematising issue. How do we make sure that the good practice and the evidence of success is able to influence our systems, not just those thought leaders and those willing to put themselves out ahead of the pack and experience the benefits? How do we make sure that we try and systematise that? So the forum, most recent one, was the most productive that I've participated in, and really energising for myself and my colleagues in the team who manage the focal point for this relationship. And that goes to the second part of what the forum does, the biennial forums with all your representatives from around the country, is that it puts a bit of a challenge to DEWA regularly and respectfully and politely, but it's a nice firm challenge that we can do better, and that we have a whole range of complementary but almost competing in many ways, competing for space, competing for time, competing for attention, competing for profile, a massive range of agendas. And we have a responsibility to try and facilitate linkages between those agendas and to bring an opportunity for the parent voice to be more included in those reform agendas. So that challenge has been heard clearly from the parent bodies at the forum. And I find that extremely useful, and it's always a good, shake-up. And when you deal with rapid reform agendas and rapid processes with competing priorities, those sorts of opportunities to reflect and check on how well we're doing are critical. And while I would not claim thus far that I or my colleagues have adequately responded to the challenge, we are making attempts, and I do commit to continuing to try and improve our performance so that your voices are better heard in the reform agendas across government. We also did hear loud and clear around the concern about preparation of teachers for working in our schools and in our classrooms with parents. And it does shock me that it is still the case today. You can have university pre-service degrees where a teacher gets no time on practicing how to talk with students and behaviour management. You can actually get through your degree without doing any behaviour management or ever learning how to treat a kid who's in trouble and needing help. And you can get through without actually practicing and testing out your skills in terms of how to work productively with a parent. That is a major issue and a challenge, and is one which is heard loud and clear by the department. And the forums also provide us an opportunity to give snapshots to our minister, and we've undertaken at this last forum to pull together those key issues, brief him on them regularly, and provide him an opportunity to think about ways that he can follow up with APC and ACSO and try to get a bit more of a demand coming for that stronger engagement. I think, that's probably enough. I think for me, listening into the discussions at the forum and with listening to Kaz and Peter in their involvement in various working groups, bodies, etc., that they do contribute to, I've used this as a sort of a working document for trying to organise my thoughts a bit, and it's a living document and changes every time one of these events occurs, to try and get a bit of a system around it. So for me, to systematise the National Melbourne Declaration goal, I think of it on the top in terms of a bit of a supply chain, if you like. We need parents to be demanding quality engagement in schools, and we know that lots of parents don't feel confident about that. So we have to work on improving the quality of parent demand of their schools, and that involves confidence, capability, information, resources, the chance to test and fail and succeed again. we need school cultures. We've talked a lot about that, and you all know great leaders in schools who create a culture in a school which is welcoming and is genuine in its engagement, and that recognise that parent engagement can cut across that whole continua from involvement in activities, but right through from the reading at home. That's a genuine effort of engagement in kids' learning. To being, joint teachers in classrooms. I've been in classrooms where parents are active teachers with the paid professional teacher, through to the governance arrangements that can work really well when there is genuine engagement and lead to change in school culture, but also practices of the teachers because they understand and recognise the value of what parents can bring. And through to parents involved in review of the school, or involvement in the planning of the school plan, a genuine engagement in how is our school community going to operate, but then also in review and assessing the performance and quality of what a school is delivering. So the school culture and the framework and the most recent low SES project, I think, are really, over time, the quality of the materials and the evidence base that we now have has just continued to progress. So that there is really now a very rich vein of resources, materials available, case studies, research reports, resources available that enable school cultures. But as I said in my question this morning to Helene, I do believe that part of what is required to make sure that good school culture becomes systematised is a demand from parents, from our education authorities, from our ministers, that good schools do equal genuine and capable, skilled engagement with parents. And hence into system demand, for me, systems must be demanding that. They must create a demand and expectation of their bureaucrats, of their teachers, of their school leaders for that. And then, of course, there are regulation and standards, like where because of the teacher standards, because of the school registration processes, because of the new school funding agenda that our government has, that is creating, I'd argue, new opportunities for ways of thinking about how to embed that expectation in terms of regulation and standard setting. And that there are new ways that we can look to ensuring that. I mean, the national curriculum, for example, with the general capabilities element of the national curriculum, gives us also a way to look at how teachers and schools are preparing kids with their social and personal competencies, and how we are looking at how well teachers do that and how well school leaders do that is an opportunity created by the professional standards related to the national curriculum. It's still forming and has got a way to go. So for me, that's a real, there's some fertile turf there for these sorts of concerns and issues that you have to be unpacked further. And then, of course, performance recognition and celebration. So it may sound like I'm just on about compliance. I'm not. I believe that the best relationships are in our schooling systems and in our classes and in our schools are formed by recognition of good performance and a way to celebrate and reward that, as well as being very clear about the standards and expectations we have for our schools. I think one of the reference this morning to the work that APC and AXO did with the Gonski Review Panel, I think is very important to acknowledge, because it's front and centre in the Gonski Review Panel's thinking and in the words that they've used in their reports, and the Finding 24 and the Recommendation 7. They are a genuine acknowledgement, I think, of the centrality of parent engagement in the kind of education that we're after for our kids. I think that's a really valuable point and a place for you and us to be going back to all the time. And it does provide a flag for us when we're advising our ministers about future funding systems, and ministers when they're listening to you as constituents, as organisations, talking to them. that we know that if we get half the picture right in the funding review and get the dollars sorted with enough money for schools to be able to say to schools, you now have a resourcing standard which enables you, if you are efficient and effective, to be able to deliver the performance we're setting ourselves, which is a high performance level. The Gonski Review recommends a high performance standard for our schools and our kids, and I'm sure we all want that. And the aim is to establish a system which will enable schools to receive the kind of money they need to get there. But if we only have that without clear expectations and clear standards for the kind of school cultures and the kind of engagement and the conditions that we want to apply in our education systems, we will have probably missed quite an opportunity. So it's good that ACSO and APC, for example, are engaged in the funding review debates, because they are a good, strong, loud voice on the need to get the whole picture right. And we have in the Gonski report some strong advocation for getting the whole picture right and not missing out on the centrality. Although, I'm allowed to say this because I am within my department an advocate for our relationship, and I do feel that we with every opportunity there's a risk, and there is a risk right now that the debate in our future funding education resourcing systems will not have adequately addressed how we support students' well-being across the domains of their person, and how we take this chance to systematise parent engagement expectations in our schools, and then plot a path to build all those elements that we know are necessary for great parent and school partnerships. And in fact, I was noticing when I was looking at this, if you look at the middle reign there, that's just me trying to form chunks of what's involved in this, what do we need to tackle in order to try and maximise the chance that our school, family, parent partnerships are going to be great. And the building parent carer, that's supposed to have skills on the end of it. Forgot that word. So yeah, can't just build more parents, unfortunately, or carers, So yeah, we need, as everyone's heard, there are multiple facets of work and energy and clear thinking that need to occur in order to have a comprehensive approach to the kind of supports that our schools have, with teachers that are ready and willing and able, parents that feel confident enough to engage and learn. And then, we might just get to the aspiration that we have. I think one recent new added element to our efforts here is Minister's recent decisions to implement an opinion survey of parents and students from next year. Don't know if you've caught that, but they have agreed that information will be collected either through integration of existing surveys used by schools, so a lot of schools do have a satisfaction survey, do ask parents, or through an instrument developed by the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority. And they've also agreed these will be done at least biennially, and they have also committed to publication of results through school annual reports, which can then be accessed through My School. So it's to me that represents it's a step, and it's a positive thing. My reading of that is we won't necessarily have consistent sets of questions across the country, so we won't yet have a nationally consistent picture, but okay, maybe that's not that important at the moment. But they have committed that at least biennially we will have school survey results on parents' opinions and students' opinions from next year, and they will be accessible to anyone who wants to find them by looking at the school annual reports on what kids and their parents have been saying about their school. So I think that's a positive step as well. I think I reckon the summary that Anne and Jan this morning gave, I thought was a really excellent set of key messages. I thought their presentation on the results of the Low SES project was tremendous, and And I like the 5 key messages as a good little simple set of prompts for me to be taking back into my work. And my colleagues, we all sort of nodded, yeah, that's a really nice little summary and those key messages. So they do, for me, say the challenge for us next is around getting a more systematic and integrated approach. We do have a range of opportunities at the moment. There are some major levers that are open for that to be included in. They're not necessarily demanding that at the moment, but I believe that the momentum is building and our ministers are actually talking and thinking about it, and that's new and that's really positive. There is a door there. And so I'm going to take that and the other messages that have come out of the meetings today, and we will continue to be working with APC and AXO and using the Bureau and its support to try and ensure that our department is building in parent engagement as a core element across all of those reform agendas. So thank you for spending your time here and sharing all your views and thoughts and ideas, and keep prodding and prompting us, and we really appreciate your engagement in this. Thank you very much.